have had a vintage which has been slightly different from the previous 3 or 4. There's 2 sort of main characteristics I like about this vintage is the acidity and the freshness in the wines, and the other thing is that the wines have a really good colour. I'm very pleased with the beginning of the vintage, which started with Sauzon and the Alicante. Those 2 varieties, I think this year actually have produced particularly well. I think the Sauzon wines are stunning actually, and the Alicante, a lot of our plantings are becoming quite mature now. The Touriga Nacional came in at a very good stage. I think we've picked it at just the right time. I'm very pleased actually with the outcome of the wines that we have from Nacional. They have plenty of colour. Aromatically, they're perhaps not as exuberant as sometimes Nacionals are, but perhaps slightly more serious, slightly more sober wines. In early September, we had some useful rain. This rain allowed for the final stages of ripening of the early ripening varieties. Later in the month of September, on the 13th and 14th, we had another short period of rain, after which we delayed the picking on the Touriga Nacional for 2 or 3 days, allowing for the dilution effect to pass, after which we picked Nacionais after this 8-day window of opportunity in which no doubt the best wines of the vintage were made. We had a further short period of rain, after which we then picked the final blocks of Touriga Franca at the end of the vintage. I think Malvedos, the vintage, is actually very good. 2020 and 2021 were probably harvests at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of really all the conditions. Overall, I think Malvedos has had a slightly bigger vintage than usual, which is a good thing. We generally have very small vintages at Malvedos, so I'm quite glad that we've had a bit more wine this year. And overall, I think the quality of those wines is very high, actually. The productions here at Cavadinha have benefited from this very gradual maturation, which has brought about wines that are extremely aromatic and giving a profile of elegance, balance, and overall I think the Nacional from Cavadinha has been particularly good. And some of the earlier wines that we made from the Vinhas Velhas here, which are wonderful old vineyards producing some of the most complex wines that we make. The principal DOCs we're making are from Quinta do Ataí in the Villarissa Valley and Quinta do Vesúvio, both Douro Superior properties where you would normally expect quite high temperatures all throughout the maturation period. This year clearly we've had much cooler conditions. I think one of the things that's been very clear at this maturation is that nighttime temperatures have been a lot lower, and that is probably one of the reasons why we have so much colour, but at the same time great acidity, and so the combination has been really quite interesting, and I think it's one of the great things about the Douro. We have quite considerable variations in vintages from one year to another. Well, Fonsoto, we've pretty much finished the whites. We picked the last whites quite recently, so still a lot to play for there. But overall, so far, the whites have been very good. We're really starting to pick the most important vineyards at this very moment, and I think the level of ripeness is showing a lot of potential. The grapes I've tasted up until now are showing the sort of characteristics that you'd expect to make top quality wines. But it's all still a bit in the balance, but I think there's a lot of promise there.